Hi class, I wanted to do a review video for your final exam. So you'll find the review sheet online, and I just barely took the exam, so I've highlighted really key points of this review sheet that are correspond almost exactly to what you'll see on the exam, or like the underlying principles for the exam. But this review sheet can be a guide for you taking the exam. So the blue highlighting is just to emphasize some of the exact things that I saw on the exam. So standard price per unit is the final delivered cost of materials minus the discounts. So there's standards in everything. In business, you know, a standard way to make a sandwich, or just things like that. And so for our purposes, the standard price per unit should be the final delivered cost of material minus the discount. So make sure you take out the discounts. Final means, you know, including the receiving costs, the shipping costs, pretty much everything you can just add up and then take out those discounts. So if it's like $100 and you get a 5% discount, you know, how would you calculate that discount? 5% would be $5. So you would use $95 as your cost of materials instead of the $100. And so you'd add the other shipping and receiving things to the $95 to get a standard price. And then standard price is the main one that we're going to be using for the exam, not really the standard quantity or rate, or even this management by exception. Ideal standards, practical standards are not on the exam. Just for your information, they are good to know what they are in a real world practical setting. For 9.2, understand and calculate the direct material variances. This is highly tested on the exam. I made a video for chapter 9 that can be really helpful in understanding how to calculate these variances. So on the exam, I believe they're all kind of lumped together in one big problem. So it'll give you direct materials, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead, or variable manufacturing overhead. All the information together. And so just make sure you do like a price variance and a quantity variance for the direct materials, labor rate variance and labor efficiency variance for the direct labor, and then manufacturing overhead, or sorry, variable overhead over here, these variances. And the trickiest one would be the materials price variance versus the materials quantity variance. So on the exam, they'll give you the amount actual quantity purchased and the actual quantity used. And so they're kind of two separate calculations. In the video that I made for chapter 9, the amount that was purchased was exactly the same as the amount that was used. But on the exam, that will not be the same. And so make sure for the price variance, you use the one that you purchased. And for the materials quantity variance, make sure the actual quantity is the amount that they actually used to make the actual product. And remember that standard price is normally on a per unit basis. Standard quantity is on a total. So per unit times it by the actual units. That's how you'll find the total standard quantity. And the purchasing manager is typically responsible for the materials price variance. So you saw that on your quiz. So reviewing the quizzes is definitely a good idea for the exam. Some of the quiz questions you might actually see on the exam, and just to help you practice and things like that. So the purchasing manager is typically responsible for the materials price variance. And so the direct labor variances and the overhead variances are very similar, right? So it's the same equation, actual rate times actual hours. Actual rate times actual hours, exact same formula. And so they'll give you, for the overhead variances, this standard hours is going to be exactly the same as the labor standard hours, because they apply this variable overhead based on direct labor hours. And so those direct labor hours, like standard, will be the same over here and over here, if that makes sense. So if you feel like you're missing part of the variable overhead hours just refer to the direct labor hours given for these direct labor variances. And remember, you have to determine if it's favorable or unfavorable. So if the standard was $1 and they spent $1.50, that would be unfavorable. The actual was higher than the expected or the standard, and so that can help you determine if it's favorable or unfavorable. I go over that also in the video that I made for Chapter 9. For Chapter 10, the advantages of decentralization. So that's, and the disadvantages. I think this is supposed to be disadvantages of decentralization in organizations. So that's on the exam. There's not anything on cost, profit, or investment centers, but still good to know. The traceable and the common fixed costs really come into play in Chapter 11, so I'll talk about that, and that's when you're discontinuing a